You do that every time for us, and I'm so appreciative of your words and your voice. So miigwech for doing that. Thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you for being here, and absolutely please let us know where you're from and say hi in the chat if you feel like it. I'm so honored to be talking to you guys today. If you guys know me from other workshops, you know that I'm the Food Sovereignty Skills Instructor at United Tribes Technical College. That's the tribal college here in Bismarck, North Dakota. And I'm coming to you from my home today. And I'm so happy to be here. I have had the craziest day. Earlier, one of my sisters from Pine Ridge came up, and she was teaching all of us to thinly slice the meat for drying. And now we have a bunch of buffalo meat drying, hanging and drying for the winter months. And if any of you guys are into deer meat and bison meat, you know, if you hunt, it's really a great thing to be able to have dried meat all winter long, and not to necessarily always rely on your freezer. And so I'm really thankful to have that, and we'll have that all winter. So that's good. And now I get to be here. I have not eaten all day. And let me just tell you guys that I am going to make cattail pancakes, cattail pollen pancakes for you guys today, right here. And I'll talk more about that in the recipe and everything in just a minute. You guys were also sent, along with your amazing cattail pollen, you were sent a beautiful packet, and it actually has pictures and everything. That's a great resource to turn to when you're talking about cattails. And hopefully, you know, I'll share even more information with you. You know, I think that, you know, I think it's weird for some people to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go listen to this lady talk about cattails for like an hour. But the thing is, there's so much to say about them. They really are such a gift from the Creator. And, you know, I always think of the world when I'm talking to my students. I think of the world in terms of, what can I teach my students that's going to be easy for them to recognize? But also, if something happened, you know, like we always say, if the you-know-what hits the fan, and you couldn't get to a grocery store, or what if you couldn't get to a clinic? What do you know about our world? You know, like could you feed yourselves? Could you feed your family? If tomorrow you you know, you needed to eat, obviously, and to feed your family, and all of a sudden all the grocery stores were closed down, whether it's due to a pandemic or it's due to government issues, you know, the fall of the stock market, something like that, what would you do if there were no grocery stores to go to? A story that I often tell is one of my very dear friends lives in a country that was where the government was overthrown. And so one night I was talking to her over Facebook Messenger. Literally, she was on her iPhone, and we were talking. And she said, oh, I'll send you all that information tomorrow. I got to get to bed. And so I waited the next day for the info, and I didn't hear from her. And I thought that was so weird. And I turned on, I happened to be watching the news, and I saw that the government of her country in Asia was overthrown. And the people who overthrew the government turned off all of the internet in the whole country. So no one could get any word out. No one, the news agencies, no one were able to project. And finally word got out because they were able to kind of secretively do it. But she said to me that she tried to go to the grocery store the next day. So one day she's on her iPhone. The next day she tries to go to the grocery store, and there are guys with machine guns in front of the grocery store trying to charge her $250 for a gallon of milk. And so, you know, I think of things like that. What if we came up against something like that? You know, cattails are one very easy to recognize plant that has a multitude of edible and medicinal and material uses. So if you just know cattails, you are more ahead of the game than a lot of people. And obviously, you know, I think we have a lot of Dakotas and Ojibways on here, and, you know, so you guys know wild rice and, you know, dandelions and things like that, but cattails are really a great thing to know, and really a lot of us call them nature's grocery store, and I'm kind of excited to tell you all why. So I'm gonna just do a screen share here. And have you guys, you know, check out some of this stuff with me. Okay, all good? Isabel? Okay, awesome. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to talk to you guys about some of this stuff today. And in a minute, I'll stop the screen share just for a little bit so that I can teach you guys how to make some cattail pancakes, cattail pollen pancakes with that gorgeous golden pollen that Isabel sent out to you all. It's so beautiful. And you know, I think it's funny because earlier I was thinking to myself, this stuff is like gold. And I know that refers, like, it's a golden color, but it's really so valuable. This is good medicine, and this is amazing health-wise. You can eat it in pancakes like I'm gonna show you today, or there's a multitude of other uses for it, and we'll talk about some of those. So I'm gonna stop in a little bit, stop the screen share, and teach you guys my cattail pancake recipe, okay? But for now, I wanted to show you what cattail shoots look like. And I'm sort of starting in the early spring. So, you know, right around the new year, you know, the indigenous new year, around March, the cattails start shooting up out of the wetland areas, okay? So of course we all know that cattails have that weird brown corn dog looking thing on the top, but that doesn't happen till way later in the season, okay? Early in the spring, this is what they look like. This is what cattail shoots look like, okay? And this is really my favorite edible stage of the cattails, okay? So basically what you do is you put on your boots and you get out there in the mucky spring swamp, and you reach down, and you might get your hands a little wet, you know, maybe you're out hunting ducks. If any of you guys hunt ducks in the spring, this happens right around the same time. You know, you wait, you can get them when they're even shorter than what's in the picture here. Or you can get them at this stage, and you reach down and you pull them up. And what you have there, you see on the right, where the gentleman is holding those cattail shoots, though that white tender part of the cattail in the spring is delicious. And if any of you have ever eaten this, I would love to hear from you. Put it in the chat or whatever. This part of the cattail is so yummy. It's my favorite time to eat them. They taste like raw cucumber, but they have a texture that's nice and firm, so you can cook with them. You know, it's kind of hard to stir fry a cucumber. Have any of you guys ever thought about trying to cook a cucumber? They're not very good cooked. Cattails have that flavor, so even kids like them because they have a really mild flavor to them, not weird. There's no weird texture to them or anything. They're nice and crunchy, but they taste fantastic even when they're cooked. So you can like stir fry those tender cattail shoots. You can boil them, like let's say, you know, the wild rice dishes we all love to make. You know, even if you're making wild rice soup, chop up some cattail shoots and put those in there with your wild rice soup. Some of you guys like creamy wild rice, like maybe say a chicken and wild rice as a creamy soup. You can absolutely chop up some cattails and put those in there. It adds a beautiful texture. If any of you guys like Chinese food and you have those rectangular looking bamboo shoots in your Chinese food, cattail shoots have a very similar flavor and texture to those. So in case you were kind of wondering what they taste like, so you can do all kinds of stuff with them. And again, this is probably my favorite stage to eat them. I have to tell you that I have a very good friend who she made this documentary about her life and about her desire. She's Anishinaabe, and she was really trying to research her roots. She grew up in the city, and I took her out in the spring to pick cattail shoots, and she pulled one up, And you know, you don't even have to clean it off. It comes right out of the water, totally clean. And she took a bite of it and she was like, wow, those are delicious. And they were. But then later on, sometime toward like July, she decided to take her girls, her daughters out to the same swamp, and they pulled up a big tall cattail. You know, it was July, so the cattails were fully grown by then. And she peeled them down to the tender white part, and she tried to get her kids to eat it. And let me tell you that they do not taste good at that stage. The shoots, the inside tender white part tastes and has the texture of styrofoam, and like chewy styrofoam. So not good. If you're gonna eat the shoots, the tender white shoots, the inner part of the shoots, you have to get them in the spring, okay? Now that's not to say, that's why cattails are so wonderful. It has an edible part throughout the entire year. So it's early October. I could, and I almost went out and like gathered some cattail roots for you guys today, but like I said, I was in another workshop. But right now, if I wanted, I could go out and get cattail roots, and I'll talk more about that. Early spring, you get the shoots. Okay. So right after the shoots shoot up and get a little bit taller, check out that picture there on the left, okay? Do you see that sort of firm looking green stalk on the bottom? And then on the top is that kind of weird fluffy looking yellow golden part, right? Now that more firm green part on the bottom of the left-hand picture, that will soon become the big fluffy brown corn dog part later. The golden fluffy yellow stuff, that's the pollen. That is what we have in these baggies, okay? So the top of that is what we have in these bags. And cattail pollen is super high in nutrients. It is full of all kinds of vitamins. It is full of protein. It's full of good carbohydrates. If you want to, you know, I don't normally like using the term superfood because, you know, wild rice is a superfood, you know, like these prairie turnips, that's a superfood. You know, a lot of our berries, blueberries are superfoods. You know, they're all superfoods for us because they're traditional foods. So I don't really like the word superfood, like you could have one food that's good for everything. But if we're talking about really amazing nutritious foods, cattail pollen mixed with wild rice is a survival food. You could actually survive on cattail pollen and wild rice. You could just survive on just that. Which is crazy, right? So, so that's the stage at which the picture on the left there, that's the stage at which you gather the cattail pollen, okay? Now, that firm green stalk underneath the cattail pollen, that is also edible. And again, I'm referring back to Chinese food, but in Chinese food, have you ever had the little baby corns? That tastes and has the same texture of those little baby corns. So you can actually take those and cut them up, take the green part off and stir fry them. You could put them in all kinds of dishes, soups and stews and all kinds of stuff. They're absolutely delicious. So both parts of that picture on the left are edible. Now, probably 3 weeks later, now look at that bigger picture on your right. About 3 weeks later, the cattail pollen, the yellow part, has matured and it's turned brown. Do you see that? That brown stalk at the top? And the corn dog part, I don't know what else to refer to it as for people who aren't botanists. I could call it the, you know, the pistillate thing, you know, the pistillate part of the plant. But so that part, the fluffier part at the bottom, that will later on become the big brown fluffy part. That is still edible. It's a little, I find it to be a little stickier than baby corn, but it's still edible. Okay, so even at this stage, you can still collect the pollen from the brown part, the top part of the stalk, and you can still eat that sort of fluffier part of the stalk. Okay, still edible. Now, I'm gonna stop sharing here for just a minute because I wanna teach you guys how to take that gorgeous cattail pollen that's so full of nutrients. You know, the thing about pancakes is that they're not very good for you. I hate to say that. I know people love pancakes. And of course, you know, you guys, a lot of you live in Minnesota where you have beautiful maple syrup, real maple syrup. We also have maple trees out here, and we tap and we do sugar bush out here as well. But all in all, pancakes just aren't that healthy, okay? Not only are cattail pollen pancakes an amazing way to make pancakes healthier, but they're a beautiful golden color when they're cooked, and your kids don't even know that the cattail pollen is in there unless you tell them, which is great to teach them those things. But if you're worried about it, they don't even know it's in there. It just tastes fantastic. And it adds kind of a sweet nuttiness to the pancakes that kids love. Okay, young people love. And adults too, you know, I know a lot of us, like our kids are adventurous these days. They're like, hey, I want to try a ghost pepper. You know, kids are crazy these days. It's us who are the ones who are like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that. Well, I feel like cattail pollen pancakes are like a fantastic way to even get adults to try this food item. I almost said new food item, but this is like one of our traditional foods for all of our peoples. Even if you're not if you're not indigenous to North America, like a lot of you know, my mom is Asian. She's part Mongolian and part Korean, and they love cattail pollen over there as well. So I'm going to teach you guys my recipe here for cattail pancakes. Pulled up my recipe because I don't have it memorized. But first I want to say that I have half a cup of the cattail pollen. Now, you guys will be totally shocked because Isabel sent, did you send one bag to each participant, Isabel? Okay. So one of these bags is almost half a cup. It doesn't look like it. But one of them is almost half a cup. It gets it's almost like it puffs up once you get it out of the bag. So in here, I have half a cup of the cattail pollen. You guys kind of see that? Oh yeah, there you go. Half a cup of cattail pollen, half a cup of flour. You want to use whole wheat flour? Go ahead. You want to use corn flour and make corn cattail pollen pancakes? Oh my gosh, delicious. I didn't have any corn flour today, so I used regular flour, but it's organic flour, so organic white flour. Just a little, just to put something else in there real quick. Never, ever, ever buy bleached flour, okay? First of all, the Western obsession with bleaching everything is super weird and racist. They bleach flour, they bleach coffee filters, there's this obsession with the thought that flour, for some reason, has to be pure white. It does not. And bleached flour, that process, that bleaching, is actually very unhealthy, and it adds a lot of weird compounds and chemicals to your flour that you don't even need. It's totally unnecessary. So please, when you buy flour, even if you don't buy organic flour, that's fine. Buy unbleached flour, always, okay? It's just one small change you can make to your diet. It still tastes and bakes and does everything exactly the same. But it is without that bleaching process. That bleaching process is also terrible for the environment, okay? So if you can do one tiny thing, make one tiny change in your diet, please don't ever buy bleached flour. And for that matter, don't buy bleached coffee filters either, because it just adds weird chemical agents to your coffee too. Okay, so half a cup of cattail pollen, half a cup of flour. Getting down off my soapbox here. And to that, I'm gonna add a cup of milk. Okay, I'm going to add in here I have 2 tablespoons of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'll send this recipe to Isabel so that she can send it out to all of you if you want it, okay? I have 2 tablespoons of baking powder. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what, the recipe that was passed down to me. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, and you can totally, did we use maple sugar in here? Oh yeah, we used maple sugar in here. So, which will go great with like the maple syrup and everything. So you could use white sugar, but we used maple sugar in here, okay? So I'm adding that. And you also add 1 egg, okay? No shells, good. And 2 tablespoons of melted butter, okay? So that's all the ingredients. It's just half a cup of cattail pollen, half a cup of flour, a cup of milk. You can use buttermilk if you want. 2 tablespoons of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, maple sugar, an egg, and some melted butter, okay? And I'm just barely gonna mix it. Just barely, you know? Just enough to make sure it's incorporated. Don't ever overmix your pancakes because then they get tough. Okay, check that out. Check out my batter, okay? All right, now I'm gonna pass this off to my lovely assistant and he's going to cook them. And then you guys will have to watch me eat them. Unless you are also making these at the same time, which would be really cool. Yeah, so he's gonna cook them up on the stove that's right over here. And then in a couple minutes, you guys will have to watch me eat them, which might be a little bit of a bummer, but I don't know. When I watch the cooking channel, I don't mind watching people eat. So I'll tell you guys how they taste. I've had them many times. I've had them many times and they're delicious. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my screen share for a little while here. Are there any questions that I can't see from anybody? Does anybody have any questions?
Linda, I was wondering if you have like a dairy substitute that you can use in that recipe?
Yes, you can absolutely use any kind of milk you want. Any of your nut milks. In fact, was this goat milk today, dear? Okay, this wasn't goat milk, but my sister-in-law, my husband's sister has goats, and we often use goat milk instead. But if you don't want to use any kind of animal milk, absolutely use any of your nut milks. And I'll tell you what, coconut milk in this is fantastic. It actually gives it even more of a, it's a beautiful flavor. So any of your nut milks are a great sub.
Okay, which?
Any other questions for that? Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of keep going here.
Linda, I don't know if you're gonna move on from the pollen, but somebody did have a question with what is the best time of the year to collect the pollen?
Yep, the best time of the year is when it looks the way it does in the left-hand picture. Do you guys see that? Now, that's in the spring still, but it's usually May, right? May is still spring. Yes, it is. Okay. May, right around May. And the reason why I hesitate to give you like a very specific time is because I live in North Dakota and sometimes it's still winter in May. So sometimes the cattail pollen isn't anywhere near ready until say mid-June. So it's better to just kind of go by the way it looks. Notice how in the left-hand picture, that top, the top of that looks fluffy and golden. So you just kind of, you know, what I do is I drive by the cattail patch and I look out the window and I'm like, oh, not ready yet. Oh, not ready yet. And then the day comes and I'm like, aha. Okay, then what I do, okay, I'll use this as an example. Then what I do is I take a plastic bag, or you can take any kind of bag you want. Some people, if they're super tradish, they take their bluebird flour sacks out there with them and do it. Whatever. Take your bag and you bend the stalk over and you put it inside your plastic bag and you shake it. You shake the pollen off, okay? Now, I have had people just cut that part off and take it home with them and do that at home, but it's pretty messy. It's a messy process because that pollen does get everywhere. So in my experience, the best thing that you can do is take your plastic bag, wrap it around the stalk, bend it, and shake. And each one will give you a good tablespoon or 2 of cattail pollen. Okay. Now for people like Isabel bought cattail pollen from people who get massive and massive quantities, right? So I bet they must have probably 20 people going out and doing that for them because it is time consuming, but it's also, you know, it's a fun way to spend the afternoon, you know, and it is a wonderful food to have around, to keep around, because whether you're even, if you're making fry bread, I mean, a lot of you guys probably eat fry bread. In our family, we have decided that we are going to limit our fry bread consumption to like 2 pieces a year. And I know that sounds extreme, but fry bread isn't great for you. If you want to make fry bread a little healthier, I'm not saying that you should be eating fry bread, but if you want to, and you're like, okay, there has to be a way to make this better, add some cattail pollen to your fry bread dough. It'll make it a beautiful golden yellow color, and it adds like protein, complex carbohydrates, and a lot of nutrients to it, okay? Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so as we get a little later into the season, that fluffy yellow part up there, the cattail pollen part, let me look at the chat here real quick. I actually can't look at the chat while I am screen sharing, so sorry.
Okay, we have like a couple questions.
Okay.
How long does the cattail pollen last for, and does it ever get old?
Okay, so those are great questions. No, it never gets old. You can actually if you keep it in a jar, for example, just a glass jar, that cattail pollen will last years. And it doesn't get, you know how if you keep flour or oil too long, it almost tastes like it gets rancid or it just gets a weird flavor? Cattail pollen doesn't get that. It stays good for years, okay? Did that answer, is there any other questions?
So, yeah.
Okay. So in this photo, I just wanted to put this because, let me go back one just for a second. So these are stages. Early in the spring, you have the picture on the left. Then a few weeks later, you have the picture on the right. And then a few weeks after that, you know, that fluffy part, maybe some people call it the corn dog part, it really starts to get brown up. And the pollen is pretty much all gone. If I got these, if I went out and it looked like this, I would probably say to myself, oh, it's too late to get any pollen off of there. Because if you bent those over and shook them, you might get some brown fluff off of there, but you wouldn't get very much pollen at all, okay? So what happens, and this is talking about plant sex a little bit, is the yellow pollen, okay, falls down onto what, as a botanist, we call the female part, and it fertilizes the female part, okay? So it's kind of like people sex, really, but this is plant sex. So the yellow pollen, which is the male part, falls down onto the female part, and it creates that fluff that has little seeds attached to it, and then the fluff flies away and it makes more cattails, okay? So in case you're just wondering, like, how that works. But at this stage, after the female part has been fertilized, almost all the pollen has fallen off and it's gone, okay? Now at this stage, that's when you can eat the roots and the what we call the rhizomes, okay? And I'll talk more about that and show you some pictures later, okay? All right. So I just wanted to show you a couple more things you can do with the spring parts of the cattail. These are gorgeous photos. I'll talk on the left there. Can you tell what that is? That's basically a mock cattail corn on the cob, right? That's that part I was saying you can, that tastes like baby corn, and it does. So you can like cut the green part off, you could cut off the, what they did there is cut off the pollen stalk, the yellow part. They probably saved that and used that for food, okay? Use that for pancakes and stuff. And then they had that tender green part there that tastes like baby corn. And so they kept some of the stalk on there, and you can basically, you know, it looks like they maybe blanched those quickly in some boiling water, salted water, seasoned them a little bit. And you could serve those with a wonderful dipping sauce, and they would be absolutely delicious, or with some butter, and it would taste a lot like corn on the cob. Very young, sweet corn on the cob. And you can just pull those off of there and eat them, okay? Just like that. They've also taken the young shoots. Look at the bottom picture on the right, okay? The green part that you see there is actually garlic flowers, but the white part is the young shoots of the cattail that have been steamed, and it has like a vinaigrette over it. So that's like a cattail shoot salad. Then in the top is a cattail shoot. They've taken them and chopped them up and added them to a nice soup. Now let's talk about that spaghetti on the right. That is spaghetti that the reason it's that golden color is because the sauce is just butter and cattail pollen. That's what's coating those beautiful spaghetti noodles is butter and cattail pollen, little bit of salt. And then the spice that they have on there, are any of you guys familiar with bee balm? We've talked about it in previous workshops. Bee balm is a wonderful medicine, so good for you. It's very antimicrobial, but it also kind of tastes like oregano. So this is cattail pollen and wild oregano spaghetti, okay? And it's absolutely delicious, okay? Any questions on what you're looking at there before? I think I have another food picture to show you as if we're not all hungry yet.
No, but it all looks fabulous.
It does, doesn't it? Okay, so, sorry, we have someone cooking over here. So on the left, you have a venison and cattail shoot stir fry. And then on the right, you have the young, the green part that's been taken off the stalk and chopped up and made into tacos. Delicious, okay? And you know, you're gonna, like, imagine serving these to people, right? People will be like, oh my gosh, that's super cool. I know I would, even though I can eat them and do eat them every spring. So I just wanted to show you some recipe ideas for those parts. Now, of course, later on in the season, the cattails start to, this is what they look like right now, practically, okay? They start to kind of lose their fluff, and that fluff will fly away, and it will make new, it'll land on the shore, and it'll make new cattails. It plants their seeds, okay? That cattail fluff, and the reason you see all that in the bag on the right, it's very easy to collect. If you are into making stuff, I absolutely highly recommend that you start collecting cattail fluff. I have a friend who has made her whole living. She's paid for her college with cattail fluff pillows. They are not allergenic, so it feels like down pillows. They're very fluffy and soft, and it feels like down, but they're non-allergenic. So if you're allergic, especially to something like duck down or goose down, cattail fluff is a great option. So she makes cattail fluff pillows. She makes cute little dolls for kids made that are stuffed with cattail fluff. Back in the day, cradle boards were stuffed with cattail to make them softer. Moccasins were, and some people still do use cattail fluff as insulation in their shoes, in their moccasins. And it's because cattail fluff is very insulating. It's waterproof, okay? So if you want to add a waterproof layer to a jacket, to your moccasins, to your boots even. I know some of you guys probably spear on the ice, go ice fishing in the winter. If you do that and you notice that your toes always get cold, put some cattail fluff in a little baggie like this, the fluff, and put it at the front of your boots, and it will keep your toes warm. You're welcome. Because you will absolutely be amazed how well that does. And it's free, you can like go out and buy toe warmers and all that stuff, which actually those chemical warmers that you break and then put there, I know they're useful and amazing, but they've been known to actually cause chemical burns and all kinds of stuff on people. Plus they're not good for the environment. think about this. You have basically an organic way to, and totally natural way to fix, as a fix for that, okay? So there's tons of stuff you can do with it, and it's a very traditional way to keep babies and adults warm. So that's the cattail fluff. Now, I also wanted to, any questions on any of that? Okay, if you look up cattail pillows, just Google it, you'll actually see like lots of methods for stuff like that, okay? And you know, I think that this is also a really good thing to know in a survival situation. Some of you have probably heard me say that I get so frustrated with those post-apocalyptic films because they, you know, everyone's always struggling so much. And like cattails, like think of The Walking Dead, right? You know, they're freezing, they're, you know, they're having a hard time for a long time, they're starving. Why aren't any of them eating cattails? You know, why aren't any of them using cattails for something? There's actually a lot of ethnobotany on The Walking Dead. So I thought about like writing a blog about it because it's kind of fun. But yeah, I've never seen them use cattails. So it's a great, you know, great survival tool. Oh, by the way, those cattail stalks, when they're just a little younger than this and they haven't started to come apart, make wonderful torches. So, you know, if you are stuck somewhere and you need some light, a cattail, the top of the cattail makes a perfect slow burning torch, okay? All right, now let's talk for a minute about the cattail roots, okay? Now on the left here, you actually have the spot that's right between the roots and the shoots. See that green part at the top? This is sort of like part shoot, part root, okay? That part is gathered also in the early spring, but sometimes you can find them in the fall. You know how sometimes plants will start to grow again in the fall and they'll send up shoots and stuff like that, new shoots? You can actually, even right now, if you went out to the cattail patches, you can find some of these, okay? Like the picture on the left. One of my friends, when they took the shoots like that on the left and stir-fried them in some butter, just some butter and salt. They wanted to know what they tasted like and to test them. And their description of them is that they tasted a little bit like the most tender lobster tail. So if you're into that, I'm not a big lobster fan, but I still like them. To me, they remind me again of like bamboo shoots. Don't forget the syrup. Okay. Oh, he made it kind of cute. Can I have a fork? Okay.
You know what you're adding.
Oh yeah, I can dip them too. Yeah. So beautiful, sort of a golden yellow, right? Golden. Don't show them the burnt one. He said. Everyone always burns one, don't they? Okay, let's hide it. Cattail pollen pancakes. The smell, I wish you guys could smell it. It smells sweet, like sweeter than normal pancakes. There's like a honey-like aroma to it, but also a little bit nutty, kind of like a pecan almost, like a pecan type of aroma to it. It's fantastic. Let me break one open so you guys can kind of see the inside. Okay, so check that out. Can you see the steam coming off of it? Am I making you guys hungry? Okay. It actually has almost a floral kind of aroma too that I've never noticed, but we have some of our maple syrup here and I'm just gonna dip that. Oh my God. Oh, yep. My hands were actually shaking there. I'm on keto and I'm still eating this because I love you guys. That's better than a regular pancake. 20 times better. It tastes almost like someone ground up really tender pecans and put them into the flour as well. And it tastes sweeter, especially with the maple. It tastes even sweeter. And the texture is unbelievable. It's, they're fluffy, but also, yeah, but crispy, like a little bit of crispy on the outside. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna eat those afterward. They're so good. And you know, like you guys could see, that was so easy to do. It's just a little bit of measuring, mix it up. And you kind of can't go wrong, because you know how sometimes when you make, some people like rubbery pancakes, kind of like a, what are those called? Crepe. And that's fine too. You can make these really thin. You just use less of the baking powder, okay? I don't like thin rubbery pancakes. I like them to be fluffy. And these are, like, the texture is just perfect and the flavor's amazing. Here you go, dear. You can have one, but make sure to save the other two for me. Okay, so let's get back to the roots here. Thank you. I feel like they taste, instead of the tender lobster tail, I feel like they taste more, again, like the bamboo shoot. And they even look like that a little bit if you check them out. Now, on the right there, you have the roots that go a little deeper, right? They look like roots. Once you wash those off, you can actually grind those into flour, and you can have cattail flour. And it's wonderful. I've actually made cattail flour fry bread before. I added cattail pollen in there as well. And I did use some regular flour too, but it made beautiful, light, fluffy fry bread. And it was delicious. Like, there was no, you really couldn't tell. The flour that's made from the roots really doesn't have much flavor to it. So it makes a really good flour, and it's very easy to get. So basically, you'd wash those roots off, and you can do that right now. Okay, you can go out and get those roots right now. Now's the time to do that. Go out and get them. Wash all the dirt off so that they're nice and clean. If you use a vegetable brush, go ahead and brush them up till they're nice and clean. And then, have you guys ever made like hash browns, and you wash the hash browns, the potatoes, off in the water, and the potato starch falls to the bottom of the bowl? Have you guys ever noticed that? Potato starch in the bottom of the bowl? Okay, if you cut up potatoes and you wash them, all the starch washes off and it falls to the bottom of the bowl. It's the same way with cattail roots. The way that you get the flour is just by taking the roots, cleaning them really well, and then cutting them up and letting them set in a bowl of water. And all that cattail flour will fall to the bottom of the bowl. You just pour the water off, and you basically have wet cattail flour. If you wanted to pour the flour off onto cookie sheets and let them dry, you can have that cattail flour stored, and it lasts forever. Okay, and there's videos for doing that online. It was something that I had considered demonstrating, but it would mean like a lot of getting up and down and going places because you can't do that sitting still. You really need to wash them up and clean them. Now, you can just stir fry those roots too. Clean them up really well, chop them up, put them into soup and all, all that. Those cattail roots are a wonderful soup thickener. So if you're looking to make more like a nice beef stew, you can add some of those chopped up cattail roots to your beef stew, and it'll thicken it up so nice, okay? And it adds a lot of nutrition to it too. Cattail roots are very nutritious as well, okay? Are there any questions, comments on the cattail roots? Has anyone ever tried them before?
Linda, we did have a question about sustainability.
Yep. So how sustainable is it to pull up the roots kind of question?
The question just said, well, yeah, it said, please say something about sustainability.
Okay, I will. So firstly, cattails have taken over a lot of our wetlands. And when I say taken over, they are a native plant and they're wonderful and amazing. But there used to be ways to control cattails. And because farms put a lot of nitrogen into their soil, farmers, ranchers, farmers put a lot of nitrogen into the soil, that nitrogen washes off and goes into our wetland areas. So actually cattails, there's a lot of research showing that cattails in some places have choked out wild rice. Cattails actually have filled up a lot of wetland areas and taken over a lot of areas where ducks once made their nests, you know? So cattails, I will say, are not endangered or anything or threatened in any way right now. But one nice thing about cattails, and one of the reasons they're so prolific, is that, see those roots there in that picture on the right? They spread under the soil like this. They creep like this, and then they'll send up new cattails. So those roots will grow and creep over to here, send up a new cattail. Grow and creep over to here, send up a new cattail. So as a botanist, we say they spread by rhizomes, okay? So not only do they spread by their seeds flying away and planting themselves, they spread by rhizomes, okay? So that makes them also very, very sustainable. So even if you pull up a bunch of the roots, let's say I got 10 pounds of roots today, it will actually, if I did that, and I did that in the right way without clearing the entire lake, I'm actually doing a service to the cattails, because what will happen in a cattail patch that no one touches? In about 5 years, that cattail patch will get so thick that it will choke itself out. And the cattails won't have many nutrients, so they'll start dying off. So if you guys see like big, huge, thick cattail patches, sometimes they'll start dying off because they choke each other out. So what I do is when I find a really nice, thick patch of cattails, I will actually take about half of them, whether it's the shoots, the roots, whatever. I'll take about half, and that's it. And I'll leave the rest to grow back in. And sometimes I've found actually that I can create healthier cattail patches by sustainably harvesting them. Because it's kind of like pruning a tree, right? I'm sorry, was there a question?
There was one more question, and well, two more. Can I eat pollen raw? Like, can it be spread on yogurt or in a salad? And then the other question was, is this bare root?
Okay. So the first question about the cattail pollen raw, absolutely. I will sometimes just put it, on oatmeal, just mix it into oatmeal. So putting it in yogurt, totally fantastic idea. In fact, you know what I just got inspired, some yogurt, some nice homemade yogurt, even with some honey and cattail pollen. So good. Put some berries on there. Oh my gosh, that would be great. And so good for you. I would think it would be, I would think it would almost be like an additive or whatever, a supplement, like a dietary supplement almost, only it would taste really good. This is not bitter root or bare root. I know that does kind of look like it, and bitter root, wike in Ojibwe, in Lakota, bitter root is called sinkpe. In Dakota, it's called sinkpe tawote, the muskrat root. And in Ojibwe, it's called winke. Sorry, my Ojibwe isn't very good. This is not that. They grow in the same place, and the roots do look very similar, but this does not have that same smell or medicinal properties of wike or sinkpe tawote, okay? They're related, but they don't, they grow in the same area, but they're not the same plant at all, okay? Any other questions? Okay. All right. I also wanted to, so great stir-fried, great to make flour from, great in soups and stews. You can use it as a thickener, all kinds of stuff, okay? Now, I also wanted to talk a little bit about cattail medicine. Cattails are incredibly medicinal as well. I know a lot of people use them more for food, and a lot of people use them more for like materials, like the fluffy part, but they also make a wonderful medicine. And it's mostly the pollen that is medicinal. So if you didn't want to try cattail pancakes, although I don't know why you wouldn't, if you didn't want to try cattail pancakes, maybe you're on keto too, you can absolutely still use pollen medicinally. it can be used externally. And when we say that, we mean on the outside of your body to stop bleeding. Can you guys still hear me? It's saying my internet connect.
Yes, we can. Oh, now you froze. You froze and now you're back.
Okay. So is it better?
Yes.
Okay. Oh gosh. I got a little message that said my internet connection was unstable and I freaked out a little. So just kind of try to signal me if that happens again, but okay. So cattail pollen, you just kind of roast it in a cast iron pan, and just a little bit of it. Let's say I cut myself while I was cooking or, you know, doing gardening or something like that. I could just take a little bit of that cattail pollen and sprinkle it on there, and it instantly stops the bleeding. So some of you guys know, I also work as a street medic, and sometimes at free clinics or on the front line, like at protests and things like that. And something that I always carry with me is wound powder. Okay, I'm going to say that again, wound powder. Because I think a lot of us don't, wound powder is super traditional, but I think a lot of us don't think of it anymore, right? Instead, we think of Band-Aids. Well, sometimes if you're out somewhere, number one, you don't have a Band-Aid, but also Band-Aids kind of get old. Band-Aids, you know, if you can't get them wet, you know, things like that. Wound powder is wonderful because if you get it wet, it just washes off. But it's still, once it's in that open wound, it'll keep it from bleeding. It's amazing. I make a wound powder, okay? And it's one of my favorite things. You know, my kids have all used it. We all use it. I make a wound powder out of cattail pollen, powdered yarrow leaves. Some of you guys have heard me talk about yarrow a few times. Powerful blood coagulant. And then the spores from the puffball mushroom. You guys have seen those round, puffy ball mushrooms growing. I know a lot of my Ojibwe and Dakota friends eat them. This time of year, they've gone from white, right? Those white ball mushrooms. They've gone from white and now they've turned brown and dried, right? Those dried brown, I actually have a jar of them back here. Somewhere. Oh, okay. I have some. So they've now, those puffball mushrooms have turned dark brown, and the spores, the dust from those puffball mushrooms with the cattail pollen and with the powdered yarrow.
Linda, you froze up. Let's just give her a moment to rejoin. Looks like she got kicked off. Well, let's see here.
Can you guys hear and see me again?
Yes, thank
you.
you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that freaks me out. The internet's on for you? It cut me off. I don't know. Oh my gosh. Sorry guys. Okay. So I'm gonna screen share here real quick. Again. So sorry about that, you guys. I can't tell you the anxiety that gave me. Unless you guys were all feeling it too.
I felt it, Linda.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Can I screen share? Okay. Maybe it's my laptop or something. Okay. Well, hopefully it'll come up or something will happen in a second. Okay. So I was talking about, there we go. I was talking about Cattail Medicine and, oops. So the wound powder, just fantastic, right? Again, so I'm just gonna say cattail pollen, the powdered yarrow leaves, and then the puffball mushroom, the brown fluffy spores of the puffball mushroom. The pollen can also be made into a tea for kidney stones, and I can give you a recipe. I have treated kidney stones many times, and basically I have people drink, you know, I just get a glass, like let's say it was a glass, this is a pint glass. I usually do very strong rose hip tea. We've talked about rose hips many times together. Very strong rose hip tea, very strong cattail pollen tea, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, and water. Unbelievable for getting people to pass stones. Kidney stones and gallstones, that works for. Okay, so the cattail pollen tea, really wonderful for that even by itself, if that's all you can access. But you could also make the cattail pollen tea, mix it with some apple cider vinegar and olive oil. And I know that sounds crazy to drink olive oil, but it works, okay? And
we had a couple questions, Linda.
Okay, great.
The first one is, the leaves look like long iris or lily leaves. Are they related?
They are like way, way back, they're related, but they're not related. This is not any type of lily. It's not related to lilies. That's why the roots are edible. A lot of lilies have poisonous roots, or I'm sorry, a lot of irises, which are related to lilies, have poisonous roots. So you don't want to eat iris roots. But cattail, the leaves look similar, but they're not related. So you can eat cattail roots and shoots. I wanted to, no, please.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, please.
Somebody wanted the information about the wound powder, if we could send that out to them.
Absolutely. I will send out the recipe and even the directions. Hey, dear, could you, is our son on the internet? Could you get him off of there? Because it says my thing is unstable and it's freaking me out.
It's just because it's so far away, he has it up.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Am I back? Everything's okay? Okay. So yeah, I will send out the, and Isabel is so good at bothering me about that because I'm terrible. I take forever at things and she just kind of patiently prods me. So I promise I will send that out along with the recipe for the pancakes if anyone is interested. And I wanted to say a word. The leaves look very similar to a lot of other plants like bitterroot. But it's definitely not the same plant. And so it's important to like look at pictures really closely and learn to identify them. But the roots do look very different than say an iris. The other thing is that I totally forgot to say is that cattail mats are amazing and waterproof. And I have been told that they were often used in wigwams. To make wigwams waterproof, but also cattail mats to lay on and sleep on gives you a waterproof layer underneath like your mattress or your sleeping bag if you're sleeping outside. Cattail mats are wonderful. And so, and you can even like roll them up and carry them with you to like cook on and lay down as like a picnic blanket and all kinds of stuff. So cattail leaves are very useful as a material to make cattail mats. And if any of you guys know like Kevin Finney or Pumpkin Shenaniquit, they harvested cattail leaves yesterday, bundles of cattails, and they're going to be making cattail mats online. So if you want to know how to do that, check out Pumpkin on her Facebook page, and you can learn how to make cattail mats. And they're just so fantastic. So I had forgotten to add that into the material part when I was talking about the fluff. So I wanted to make sure to say that. Any other questions, Sarah? Or anybody?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and please keep asking questions as you need to. So the pollen, of course, used to make the wound powder, used to stop bleeding even by itself. Wonderful for kidney stones and gallstones. And then very, very useful in treating pain. Now, this was actually something I didn't know until recently. Isabel had asked me, are cattails used to treat pain? And I thought to myself, I don't think so. I never learned anything. And it was the weirdest thing. I was talking to an elder, and she was talking about how cattail pollen made into a tea has often been used to treat women's pains in particular. So like menstrual cramps alleviated. She said it is like a 100% menstrual cramp cure. That's the way that she put it to me, is drinking cattail pollen tea is a 100% menstrual cramp cure. So that's something, and she also said it's used after people have babies. You know how sometimes your uterus is still contracting? Sometimes that can be very painful. And she said also, along with drinking it as a tea for the pain, you're getting all the nutrition from it. So cattail pollen tea, you're getting all of this wonderful protein that's great for milk production, right? Great for, it's keeping you hydrated. The tea's keeping you hydrated. You're getting all of those nutrients, but you're also helping to treat that postpartum pain. I think that's so wonderful. And then a tea made from the stems, so you have that fluffy stalk. A tea made from the stems is used to treat abdominal pain. I think that kind of goes along with the menstrual cramp pain and even the postpartum pain. But they were saying, this elder was telling me, not just for women, but for men who might be experiencing abdominal cramps due to food poisoning and things like that. A tea made from the stems is used to ease the pain of that as well. Okay. So cattails, right? Just amazing, an amazing plant. Useful for all the way from the top, all the way to the bottom. Useful all the way from the spring, all the way into the fall. And my guess is that if you could break the ice enough where the cattails were growing, you could even get them in the middle of the winter if you were really hungry enough, those roots will be just under the surface of the soil. Those rhizomes that I was talking about, right, will be just under the surface of the soil. So, so super useful all throughout the seasons and all parts of it. So let's just kind of review for a second. In the spring, you get that gorgeous cattail pollen as soon as that top stalk turns that golden color. At that point, you can still also eat the firm green sort of baby corn-like part of the stalk, okay? And also in the early spring, you can get those young shoots that you pull up and eat the white tender part of the shoots. You can eat those raw or cooked, all kinds of ways, okay? Later on, you can you can still get cattail shoots. You can eat the roots. You can make roots, the flour out of the roots. You can get those roots and rhizomes. You can use them to thicken soups and stews, all kinds of stuff. Stir fry them, cook them down, use them in a salad. One of my students, because I require my students to make food and then serve it to the class, which is tough to do during COVID. But normally I have my students make a dish. One of my students actually took the shoots and had us dip them in like an aioli, a dipping sauce, like a kind of like a garlic mayo. And it was delicious just like that. I mean, you can just eat them all kinds of ways. You're only limited by your own creativity. So cattails, along, with all of those parts being edible, they're also very important for the material uses. You can use that beautiful cattail fluff for pillows, for insulation in your moccasins, for insulation even in your coat. Let's say you were stuck out on the ice or something, your snowmobile broke down or your four-wheeler broke down and you're stuck out in the cold. You tried to go ice fishing or you tried to go snare some rabbits. You can absolutely find some of those cattail tops, the fluff, and insulate yourself and keep yourself warm. They also make a wonderful fire starter. I forgot to say that. So along with them being beautiful torches, they make amazing fire starter. So if you had your lighter and you were, couldn't find any dry material, you can use that cattail fluff as your starter, your fire starter. Wonderful. You can, of course, use the cattail, weave them together to make cattail mats, the leaves, and it helps to be a dry layer. And of course, cattail medicine. The pollen, amazing for stopping bleeding, making it into a tea for kidney stones, for menstrual cramps, postpartum cramps, and the stems for abdominal pain. So amazing, a cattail, it's nature's grocery store, right there for you, right there for all of us. So I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second and see if there are any questions. Okay. Yep, all parts are useful. It's so cool. Okay, so are there any other questions from anybody? Any comments or thoughts on cattails or on cattail pollen or on the cattail pancakes? Any of that?
Linda,
Awesome.
if you share all of the information with me, I would definitely send it out to all the participants.
Awesome.
For the pancakes and maybe the link to your friend that was going to do the weave a mat.
Yes, I will do that.
Yes, any information I will forward it to all our participants.
Awesome. I promise I will do that. And yeah, that's going to be on Facebook, and I believe they're going to do a Facebook Live about it. So I will have to look and check that out and make sure. So, but
Linda,
yes.
so sorry, I had just one question about allergies. How do you test to see if someone is allergic to the pollen?
To cattail pollen? Okay, if you look it up, not many people are allergic to cattail pollen at all. In fact, in the early spring, it's one of those things that even when it's pollinating, some of you guys know this about me, I am highly asthmatic and I have terrible seasonal allergies, and cattail is something that has never bothered me. But one way to test it might be, like the tea wouldn't bother them. In fact, some people say that cattail pollen helps with seasonal allergies. That was another medicinal use that I heard a long time ago that I forgot to put in. But I suppose one way you could test might be to take some of the pollen and rub it into their skin. So I'll just show you, because this is actually how I test. And this is how I found out that I was not allergic to goldenrod, but I was very allergic to ragweed. Okay. So I basically, on my skin here on my hand, I just scratched with my finger a little, and then I rubbed some pollen into my hand like this, and I waited to see if I had any kind of reaction. Now, coming in that, if you did have an allergy to cattail pollen, coming into contact with it even that far might cause you to start sneezing or something. But I've never personally had that happen with anybody that I've fed it to, and or anything. But it's a good question. If you know someone who's very sensitive to pollen or has very sensitive seasonal allergies, definitely have them do a little skin test.
Which?
Any other questions or comments? I can't believe this is probably the first time in my life I've ever gotten done with anything early. So, and I definitely will send out the recipes and stuff like that, and the link to Pumpkin's Facebook page, or Kevin Finney, if you don't follow him on Facebook, he'll be having that on there too.
Oh, great. Well, this was wonderful. I'm glad we had this time today. We got to learn lots of good things about a cattail. I will never look at them the same again, ever. And I can't wait to try some of these recipes. So miigwech everyone for attending. Miigwech to Linda.